Hi, my name is Jess, and this is my video retrospect on first 6 weeks or first module of my master's degree within game design. It's known as GAM 701, and during this module we were asked to keep a running blog or reflective journal of all our work, and in the end take a look back, which is what I'll be doing today. Going into my master's, I've decided to specialise within modular kits, level design and environment design, so more towards the artistic end of what a designer's role can be, rather than the more technical aspects like mechanics or gameplay or even UI, which is kind of more a middle ground for both. I'll be looking over a few of the projects we've undertaken so far this year and my takeaways from them, as well as what I've learnt or reinforced within my working habits. Our first project was a project on remediation and how you can take one artifact and create a brand new artifact with it by changing the format, the medium, or circumventing the audience's belief. For this, I worked with a programmer. It was a team of 2 people, and it helped me really get back into level planning, recreating real places, modular kits, scaling, and actually a little bit in texturing, which is something I haven't done in quite a few years now. It was, I think personally, a good learning experience because I hadn't personally ever remediated anything to my knowledge to the extent of which we did here. It covers modding, which is something I've been interested in but never actually truly gone for. But I think after this project, I might actually give it a go and see what I can create based off what other people have given me to start with. The next project we worked on was a little game jam, which was a week long again, but this time with a 4-person team. The team was split and created based off a personality types test we all took. This was told to us that it was done in a way to try and create ideal teams where no one would get ignored, where we would bounce off each other. And I think it actually worked out quite well, particularly for our team. We had 1 programmer and 2 artists and myself as a designer. It was nice working in a slightly bigger team. Since my 3rd year and my final project, I haven't had a chance to do this, so it was quite nice to not immediately be thrown back into a 10-person team with even more disciplines such as writing and audio and animation, and having something quite short for us to do. It was quite good with the teamwork aspect, as it was more than the previous one of 2-person teams, so we had more opinions and people to bounce back off and listen to their ideas. I worked on designing and more towards like the aesthetic, and card backings is what I personally did for this project. It really helped me get back into Photoshop and creating digital art, even if it was quite simple, to a specified size, a printable standard. And it actually helped me with some of the technical setup, as I realized for many, many years I have been incorrectly creating Photoshop pixel densities within documents to a unnecessarily large standard. And that was something I took away from this, was to do more research into my preparation stages of each project so I can correctly set up the foundations for my work. It's something I look within Unity quite a lot when I'm creating scale or starting off a modular kit. I need to make sure it all clips, but it's not something I've ever really looked forward in or at within other programs such as InDesign or Photoshop. After this, I went straight on to do a job assessment, 3 days, for a local games company. And it was quite a daunting project at first, and it really pushed me to use some time management techniques we were taught about over the last few years and reiterated in this module, about blocking out your time, creating a plan, a list of priorities, which I had to bounce off what they had set me as well as what I have learned over the past few years in my base knowledge. It was a full-scale planning. There wasn't actually any in-engine work, but I did have to work to a brief, which is, we do small briefs for each project, but theirs was a lot more caveats. It was still quite open-ended, but there was a lot more than 1 or 2 points I had to adhere to. There was several specific specifications they gave me that I had to make sure all my work fit around and within, so that I was actually giving them what they wanted. It got me back into research. I'd done a little bit for our first 2 jams throughout this year, but they were quite short. So I had to condense what I was doing because other people were relying on my work to be pushed out so they could have access to it quite quickly. Whereas this, it was purely by myself. And while initially, after the hand in, I thought I spent maybe a little bit too much time percent-wise researching and on mood boards and looking over what I was creating and what's been done before, as well as additional research. In the end, I actually think it was quite a good learning experience, and in a full production standpoint, there would be a lot more. It helped me start to organize my thoughts, get back into note keeping. I ended up with 11 pages, which is not something I've had for quite a while, of just notes and research before I even really got into the creation of the document they wanted from me. And it started me back off with paper prototyping. We'd very quickly, in the call and response game jam, done some paper prototyping, but it's always something I've overlooked over the last 3 years, and something I am making an effort to this year to work on and with more heavily. I've also picked up the MDA framework for working. So that's focusing on the mechanics, the dynamics, and the aesthetics. That was something I was taught this year. I think it's quite good because it's small, it's concise. I have terrible memory issues and find it quite hard to take notes or go back and write out what I'm doing or what I've learned. So having something quite short to remember is a lot easier than maybe a 5-point acronym, which is kind of a more standard for acronyms for remembering stuff we need. I've always focused quite heavily on aesthetics. I've always left the mechanics to the mechanics designer and basically told them, when you have dimension values, so a jump height, a step height, if there's any technical stuff you need in a level, let me know. If not, I'm going to go and make something pretty, which doesn't really tie into this framework. It is pushing me to look more into the mechanics and how I can holistically design each level to fit everything in. So what pickups, what interactions, not necessarily with an NPCs, but with the environment itself, what's dynamic about it, like what points are there achievements, what does it feel like opening a door or getting your character to sit down. And the aesthetics, something I focus quite heavily on. What's it look like? What's the effect of that on the player's emotion, mental state? How can I take this and manipulate it to create the reaction I would like out of the players themselves? Having taken these 6 weeks, it's not been the easiest 6 weeks for me. I've procrastinated and struggled quite heavily with the written portion, because this is probably the most written heavy module over the past 3 years, in undergrads as well included, that I've ever had to do. So it's been quite a long time since I've had to write this much, and I've had to reflect properly. But I think it has taught me that I do need to find a method of note-taking, a method of reflection that I can continue throughout my master's and my career, but in a way that works for me. I've had a couple things suggested, like small audio logs with transcripts, or dedicating the same 5 minutes each day to go over what I've done. This isn't something I've implemented yet, but it is something I plan on looking into. I do have the setup and the software from the university to help transcribe lectures. I want to see if I can repurpose that into aiding in my own note-taking for a personal note. I'd say that was something I wasn't quite expecting going into this. I was expecting more to do the art, the texturing, 3D modeling software. Is something I very much wanted to pick up over my master's, but I feel like that pales in comparison to the importance of actually being able to critically reflect, not just in this module, but throughout what I'm doing for the rest of the year. So I've been planning to ask around and perhaps actually go and look into the study skills support again. It was something I did during my second year, but quickly got overwhelming with everything else I had on at the time. They taught me a few methods there. A few didn't work, a few did, but I feel like they would be the best help for me to actually reflect on what I'm doing, even if it's not a course specialized study skills. I believe I'm coming to the end of my time now. So thank you for listening.